we're screaming at each other about vaccinations. We're screaming at each other about masks. We're screaming about all this stuff. But what we're really screaming about is unfairness. We're screaming about unfairness and oppression and censorship, people being silenced for taking a different opinion. I mean, there are things that I could say about all this that would get the whole Daily Wire thrown off social media because they don't want anyone to say anything against the CDC, which is constantly changing its mind and not really making very good judgments or very justifiable judgments. My personal opinion, I want to put it out there, is that the vaccines seem to work great. I think people should get vaccinated. The masks, my opinion is this. I think masks must have some efficacy. Doctors have always worn masks in surgical situations. They probably have some effect, but it's not worth it. It is not worth covering our faces. It is not worth the inconvenience. It is not worth the annoyance, and it's not worth the oppression, having people tell us what to do. It isn't worth it. As Americans, we probably should just each of us decide for ourselves whether we want to wear the mask, even though they have some effect in certain situations. COVID is here to stay, okay? Thank you, China. And everyone's going to get it eventually, probably. I mean, or you're going to get vaccinated and maybe you won't. But the thing about it is that the vaccination works. And if the vaccination works, people who are vaccinated should stop wearing masks. And Biden said this in May. He said, in May, you no longer have to wear a mask. And now he says we do have to wear a mask if we're vaccinated. And then when a reporter called him out on it, he lied about it. And here is interspersed May with the president. This is cut 31.
Mr. President, you said if you are fully vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask. And it seems...
If you've been fully vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask. Let me repeat. If you are fully vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask.
If you're fully vaccinated in an area where we do not have... So let me clarify.
In May, you made it sound like the vaccine was the ticket to losing the mask forever. And
that is true at the time, because I thought there were people who were going to understand that getting vaccinated made a gigantic difference. And what happened was, the new variant came along, they didn't get vaccinated, it was spread more rapidly, and more people were getting sick. That's the difference.
But how frustrated are you with those people, sir?
Let's look at the New York Post put out a chart showing how many people have been vaccinated and how many people who've been vaccinated are getting sick. They call these breakthroughs. It's like it's something like 0.01% of people who are vaccinated are getting sick. There is no reason for vaccinated people to wear a mask. Now, a lot of people are saying, because everybody is so angry about this unfairness and the change-ups and the lies and the demonization of people who haven't been vaccinated. Everybody is so angry about this that we're screaming, at one another. And we say things like, well, they don't care about the mask. They don't care. All they want is compliance. All they want is their boot on our neck. And all they're trying to do is get us to do whatever the government says. Now, there are some smug little crap creatures like Gavin Newsom in California and Uber-Sturmfuhrer Gretchen von Whitmer in whatever, Midwestern state she's in. But there are some of these people who have lost the plot of America. They like their power. They got their power. They don't care about the people. They don't think the people should be making the decisions. They don't think the people should be going to church. They have lost the plot. But most of these people are just in a panic because they used the pandemic to get at Trump. And they blame Trump for the pandemic as if things were worse here than they were anywhere else in the world, which wasn't true and isn't true now. And here's Biden blaming Trump during the elections. Cut 8.
Over these past few months, there's been so much pain, so much suffering, so much loss. Over 225,000 dead Americans because of the negligence and the consequence of COVID. More than 16,000 here in Florida alone. Donald Trump has waved the white flag, abandoned our families, and surrendered to the virus. But the American people don't give up. We don't give in. And we surely don't cower, and nor will I under any circumstances. I'm not going to shut down the economy. I'm not going to shut down the country, but I'm going to shut down the virus.
That's what he's worried about. That is what he's worried about. His popularity is tanking. It is like in a graveyard spin. And let's face it, they're puffing it up anyway, right? It's not really as high as they say it is, but it has dropped very, very quickly from fairly high numbers to very moderate numbers. And I'm sure it's way below those also. So he blames Trump for this virus, and they all did this, and the press did it. Oh, all Trump's fault. And isn't Andrew Cuomo, wasn't he the governor? Andrew Cuomo was virtually like, talk about Michael Myers and Halloween. He was knocking off the old people of New York State, and they were holding him up as a great example, where meanwhile Trump, for all the goofy stuff he did say, and he shouldn't have said, he did push that vaccine and got it into operation and did a good job with that, and that's why we've turned things around. And now that there are setbacks, right? Now that there are setbacks and the New York Times is spreading fear again, Biden's in a panic and he's blaming you. He's blaming the unvaccinated. This is cut 7.
Will you require all federal employees to get vaccinated?
That's under consideration right now, but if you're not vaccinated, you're not nearly as smart as I thought you were.
Are you concerned that the CDC's new mask guidance could sow confusion?
We have a pandemic because of the unvaccinated, and there's so much enormous confusion. And the more we learn about this virus and the Delta variation, the more we have to be worried and concerned. And then only one thing we know for sure: if those other 100 million people got vaccinated, we'd be in a very different world. So get vaccinated. If you haven't, you're not nearly as smart as I said you are. Thanks.
And the press is laughing. Like it's Trump's fault now. It's the unvaccinated fault. Fox News' fault. It's everybody's fault but his. But, it's not his, but he knows he's going to take the hit for it. And the thing that is so awful about this, of course, is again, the unfairness. I mean, in the same time, he's telling us that we're supposed to wear a mask, even though we're vaccinated, even though we're not going to get sick, even though we're not going to get anybody else sick. And it's disgusting to wear a mask. It is disgusting for an American to have to walk around with his face covered. If this were the Black Plague, I would say maybe every little bit helps, but this is not the Black Plague. It's not as deadly as that. It is disgusting to try and force people to wear a mask while people are pouring through our southern border who are sick. Here's Ted Cruz talking about that. It's cut 11.
I've seen the Biden cages. I brought 19 senators down to the valley to see the Biden cages of little boys and little girls packed in, one on top of each other. When we were there, they had a rate of COVID positivity of over 10%. And like a churning revolving door, Joe Biden is releasing them. There was just a report this week that the Biden administration has released over 50,000 illegal aliens without even giving them a court date. Just release them. And you know what? They're asked to report into ICE. About 13% of them report into ICE. It's spreading COVID in our communities. And I'll tell you right now, the election of Joe Biden becoming president of this country was a COVID super spreader event because they're releasing illegal aliens in South Texas and all across the country with COVID, and they're spreading COVID. And yet their radical policies, they don't want to do anything to protect us.
See, Ted doesn't understand that only right-wing actions spread COVID. He doesn't get that. He doesn't see that about the disease. He probably hasn't looked through a microscope to see that, these are very, very, very red germs. They spread COVID only through conservative events. Somebody put up a tweet of comparing different coverage of different events as spreaders. So here's Vox, right? The effect of Black Lives Matter protests on coronavirus cases explained. Coronavirus cases are increasing, but Black Lives Matter protests may not be to blame. And here it is. The attack on the Capitol may have also been a super spreader event. Here's CNN. Black Lives Matter protests have not led to a spike in coronavirus cases. Research says 30, and also CNN, 38 Capitol police officers test positive for COVID-19 after Capitol riot. See, the Capitol riot is a super spreader event. Black Lives Matter riots, mostly peaceful riots, they're not spreading anything. Forbes, research determines protests did not cause spike in coronavirus cases. Forbes, lawmakers sheltering during Capitol riot may have been exposed to coronavirus. It is that sort of unfairness that is making people crazy. How can we have a conversation about what works and what doesn't work? How can we trust the CDC? How can we trust Joe Biden? How can we trust any of these people when they lie and when they treat us unfairly? And so we have to make conscious, clever, intelligent, informed decisions, not getting our medical advice on Twitter, not getting the advice from an article in our favorite outlet, but getting advice from our doctor, talking to our doctor, finding out what is going to work, what's the best thing for us to do. That is the way each of us should be acting. That is the way that America should be operating.